Hi, I'm Evan Brewer, and you are watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. Coming to you on location from the 2017 Summer NAMM Show, Nashville, Tennessee, with our good friend Evan Brewer. Hey, Evan.
Hi. Hello.
Hello. It's good to sit down with you and talk like this because we've kind of known each other for a few years. We've seen each other in all parts of the country, all parts of the world. And I wanted to give this opportunity to the people here to learn more about you and your career, everything from your work with Tosin Abasi of Animals as Leaders, The Faceless, Entheos, your current project, your solo stuff, and all of that. But I'd rather hear it from you rather than me tell you because you already know it. You're a native Nashvilleian, aren't you?
Yes, sir. I'm one of the few.
How would you say growing up in that environment affected your musical upbringing? Did you take it for granted? Did you feel that spirit of music all around, or were you just a kid growing up just like any other kid growing up in anywhere USA?
I'd say a little of all of that. Nashville wasn't the same as the Nashville now. I mean, it was a much smaller town when I was growing up. It was different. You know, it's Music City. That's what they call Nashville. But it was more probably in the country, you know, in like the 80s, just more focused on that. Then the 90s rolled around, and I think people started to kind of migrate here, and you saw the beginnings of what you're seeing really explode now, which is a more multicultural, just regular modern U.S. city where you've got all sorts of diverse ethnicity, music, food, culture, you know, so I'd say that really to sum up growing up here, yes, everyone plays music here. Like your waiter at Waffle House or whatever probably writes really good songs.
Well, I can tell you firsthand from experience that there are at least 3 Uber drivers in Nashville that are not musical. They said that skipped over them. 3 out of 3.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, I mean, but you'd be surprised. I mean, most people are at least in some way exposed to music, whether their dad wrote the Johnny Cash song back in the day, or you know, their grandfather invented the pedal steel guitar, whatever it may be. I mean, it's deeply steeped into our culture. And just directly how it would affect me, I would say I came up in a family. My dad plays music, multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, and then just the ability coming up to have a lot of avenues to explore my instrument, you know, ways to do private study with a number of different great players. And
let me jump in here. I get the music thing and the family thing, but what about the bass in particular? What attracted you to that instrument?
That was just kind of a random thing. Like, you know, when I was in school, we still had music programs. You know, they were funding that in public schools, which they've kind of gotten away from a little, and I think it's a real shame. But at that time, there were some little cheap guitars, and I had a music class, and we had these guitars, but the teacher, she didn't really know how to play guitar, but she knew how to some of the notes, so we started playing these single note runs. And I remember I got into it, and I was like, you know, my dad was like, well, if you're going to play guitar, you need to play the chords. You know, that's what the guitar does. I was like, I kind of like this single note thing. He's like, no, that's more of a bass thing. Like, you should check out. So I got a hold of a real cheap bass.
So you were about how old?
I think that was like 7th grade. I don't know how old I was. And got a hold of a inexpensive bass. And I don't know, something about it just kind of stuck with me. I just liked that.
So you could probably pick out the bass when you heard music on the radio or CDs or whatever kids were listening to in those days. Did you have any bass influences, bass heroes that you discovered?
Yeah, well, you know what's weird about that time period, that particular time period was this little pocket of time, because there was this gap, right? Like you had the 70s and the funk stuff where the bass was predominant. Then the 80s came and you kind of went into like a little bit more electronic new wave stuff. There were still really great bass lines, but not as forefront and predominant. But then the 90s came back around and there was this resurgence of good bass players but playing rock. So like on MTV, you'd have like the old style, like Red Hot Chili Peppers, and you'd have like Primus. These bands where it's like, these are guys that are like really good bass players that are featured. So I think stuff like that kind of struck me once I started playing bass. I was like, I kind of gravitated towards that because the way it was mixed and stuff, the bass was in the forefront. Eventually you learn, your ear develops, and you learn how to hear bass and separate mixes, you know, more so you can hear it in all styles. But those really jumped out at me.
It's great that Flea and Les Claypool, per your examples, are still very active today.
Yeah, also like Suicidal Tendencies was a big one. You could really hear the bass, like Trujillo's bass and stuff, and Josh Paul and those guys. You could hear the bass on their records. Yes. Like Bad Brains. There's just a lot of stuff that had like good bass players. It really spoke to me. It was cool.
So how did your career get rolling? I touched on just a few of the things that you've done and that you are doing. How did that come to be?
Well, I think it's important to kind of note, go back a little tick before my career got going, really, I would say.
Wouldn't say it's a career. I'd say it's a career.
Well, the reason I do this thing is because it's like, what's to denote? You could say it started the first second I played bass, you know? But the learning process and studying with different people around town was sort of important to that. I ended up getting linked up with Reggie Wooten, who I'm sure, if you haven't heard of him, I know you've probably heard of Victor Wooten, the bass player. There are 5 brothers, the Wooten brothers. Reggie Wooten is the guitar player.
He's the oldest.
The oldest. He's the one that sort of taught them. So I think I was 14, and I had been studying with a teacher, and I was trying to do all this crazy stuff, and she was like, you know, that's not really my thing. You need to go see this guy. And so she got me in with him, and that was huge. That, I would say, would be when the bass probably turned into like, okay, this could actually be like a career thing, because he was able to accelerate my development and feed me the stuff that I was more interested in at the time, which was probably more along the lines of the like crazier stuff. That's just, as a kid, that's sort of, it's like, I just want to go fast and rip the bass and do all this crazy stuff.
I've had the privilege of sitting down with Reggie and with Victor, and I also met Roy, Future Man.
Yeah.
And just a week or two ago, I met Joseph. I was interviewing him for I was interviewing Steve Miller's bass player.
Yep.
And he plays with Steve Miller's band.
Yeah.
He plays a lot of notes.
Yeah.
That's Kenny Lee Lewis. That was the bass player that I interviewed. Watch for that interview, too.
Yeah, I saw him with Steve Miller the other day. It was great. But yeah, so those guys are insanely inspirational, and then by developing that mentorship and turning that into a friendship, a lot of doors opened for me in Nashville, because Reggie would have me out at all these gigs to come sit in. He introduced me to a ton of people, and I'd say that would be the moment that it went from a hobby to being a career. And that was I was still in high school, and I was gigging out all over town and going and doing little regional shows and missing school and all this stuff.
That's the best part, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy to be in school and really kind of know already like what I was trying to do at that age. Feel very fortunate to have something like that. But it was definitely a clash. I felt like, it's like, why am I going here when I already know what I'm going to do? But again, back with the fact that the music programs were the way they were, my high school had a recording studio in it. You know, I had guitar programs and things that they gave, for someone like me who kind of already knew what I wanted to do, they gave me an incentive to go back. But I would say that's probably where my professional career started. And then at some point, it veered off from being the more like instrumental, not instrumental, but like general music. I kind of went down this like metal hard rock path for a while, which I'm still sort of on.
Well, let's fast forward. Tell me about Entheos. That's Entheos, right? That's the name of your current band. All right, what kind of band is it? What can you tell the folks about that band?
It's a very much a metal band, but it's musical. You know, I'm getting to do a lot of the stuff that you may have seen me do, like on my solo stuff. I'm getting to infuse that into a metal context. It features the drummer Naveen Copperweiss, who was in Animals as Leaders and also in the band Animosity with me back in the day. So he's the drummer, and the guitar player is Travis LeVrier. He's from Scale to Summit, so you probably heard of them. They're like an instrumental something or other band, and me. So it's a cool project to be doing now. I feel fortunate to be in there with those guys, and it's really kind of a logical evolution of all the stuff I've done. I'm actually getting to access all that information, going back to the like funky stuff with like Wooten and fusion and jazz stuff, and then leading into all the different metal bands. There's pieces of all that in this project. So if you're at all interested in metal, it's something worth checking out.
And you have a new album coming out, right?
That band does. Yes, we finished an album. It should be out in September or October, something like that.
Of 2017. Do you have a title for that yet?
There is a title, but I don't know if I'm allowed to say it.
Oh, we won't tell anybody.
I think my band might be mad if I blow that.
Oh, this is for bass players only. What you holding in your lap there, Evan?
This is the newest MTD bass that I've had built, and it's a great bass. It's a 5-string 534 Michael Tobias designed bass. I've got it strung up with a high C string rather than a low B. So it's a 5-string. Traditionally, a 5-string would have a low.
That's not very metally, is it?
Yeah, and this bass isn't necessarily for that band. The bass I play with them is it's also a Michael Tobias designed bass, but it's a black Saratoga, which you'll see pictures of, and if you see me on tour with them, that will be the bass I'll be playing. This is more for like my solo stuff, and just a different kind of vibe.
Well, how do you string the other one then?
B.
Okay.
Well, actually drop A, so it's A, E, A.
Now we're talking.
A, E, A, D, G. So it's got a longer scale length, and it's the big boy bass. This is the toy bass.
I wouldn't say that, because that's a gorgeous work of art too. What about the future? After the record comes out and everything else that you mentioned, what else is on the horizon for you?
Well, I'm still working on the third solo album. It's just that is something that I do. I mean, it helps my career and people enjoy it, and there's a demand for it, but more than anything, I do it for fun. So I don't rush that sort of thing, but I do have a lot of material written for that. So that could... It's starting to look more and more like that would be an early 2018 thing, but that could sneak in at the back of 2017.
Is it also metally and heavy and rock, or?
No, it's not metal
It's
at all.
all love ballads, right?
I wouldn't say that. It's more just musician-y, instrumental music. You can check out the first two.
What are they called, the first two?
The first one is called Alone. It's just bass, guitar, no other instruments, and it's a real stripped-down album. The next one is called Your Itinerary, and it's more of a full band type thing. But they're both under my name, Evan Brewer, and they're available through Sumerian Records. So you can check them out on iTunes, Spotify, wherever people go for music.
All the usual places. All right, last question, Evan. Sure. What would you be if you weren't a bass player? Something outside of music.
Probably the thing that I am in my spare time, which is like a repair. I do these like high-end flooring repairs. It's a really weird niche thing that I do, but like it's something I was doing long before. I've kind of been doing it my whole life, and I still sometimes do it just to get a change of pace. But I'd probably be doing that, or maybe like a basketball player or something.
Okay. You know, I've interviewed over 500 bass players. That's the first time I've gotten that answer. So, good for you. Keep doing the music, though. It's working out fine, and we'll all watch for the new record and the solo stuff and everything else. Evan Brewer, congratulations on your success and your professional career. And much luck, continued success to you always.
Thanks.
On location from the MTD booth at the 2017 Summer NAMM show, Nashville, Tennessee. I almost said Anaheim, California. Nashville, Tennessee. With Evan Brewer, I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.